Welcome to Deep Thrones Pod. We're doing a new series called Westeros Stories, where we enter the world of Ice and Fire with new perspectives and a focus on individual successes and struggles. This is part 2 of 4. We hope you enjoy it.
Whips, check out the hand, switch, shoes on swoosh, hitters don't miss. Already just added a ton of y'all to my list. Bitch, death wish, not to be messed with, tested quiz. They shooting shots, hitting bricks. We testing the kids.
So yeah, I think I'm just gonna dive right in instead of setting it up because you'll see once I read, I kind of want to just let you figure it out.
Awesome. Yeah.
Okay. Balg had come to this grimy, piss-stench swamp of a gambling den not to drink or place bets or pick up whores, but because he'd heard a rumor that this was a favorite haunt of his new commander. And, Balg thought, as tonight was the night before the new commander's official appointment began, surely said commander would be out celebrating. Balg began to worry, though, that he'd arrived too early, as he noted the evening crowd was potentially even more pathetic than the late-night crowd. After several hours of fighting off other patrons for a proper seat that didn't leave his best boots touching the dank, sludgy floor, Balg finally gave in, at least to the drinking, when the two-toothed barmaid offered him ale for the 5th time. It tasted more like a lightly hop-flavored water with a subtle hint of something floral. He gagged at first, so naturally he ordered 4 more and drank them in quick succession. Some hours after the sunset, the barmaid remembered to light about half of the torches on the walls, and Balg watched a particularly striking man enter. His hood was up, but even in the dim torchlight, the man had an unmistakable face. It was Balg's new commander at last. Balg smiled smugly as the new commander's favorite whore pointed at the nicer, lofted tables, the ones where you could place bets on the pits and watch the fights below, the ones Balg had chosen. Balg wouldn't even have to move. See, Balg had hoped to sit near his new commander. All Balg wanted was to listen, hoping that the man would get drunk and start rambling about his plans for the city guard. Balg liked to be prepared, you see, and if his new commander was about to make Balg's life as a city guardsman into a living hell, Balg wanted to know ahead of time. Just after the commander and his horse sat down, the barmaid returned, bringing Balg another ale. "Thank you, Balg," she drawled loudly as Balg slid her a tarnished coin. Balg pulled his mug back quickly to avoid having the woman's spittle get in his already thin ale, and before he could take a sip, to his surprise, the new commander of the City Watch was sliding into Balg's booth opposite him. Balg huffed his disappointment. "So, you are Balg?" the commander asked. His accent was less haughty-taughty and princely than Balg had expected. The commander continued, "You are the man who commands this respect of my men." "Commands? No. The respect is reserved for their commander," Balg stressed, so as not to offend. But I hear you've gotten them training lately, teaching them formations and sending them out on organized patrols." Balg huffed. "Patrolling's a loose word. If you look around this establishment, you'll notice the men on patrol are more concerned with testing the ale. Sir," Balg added, the title after a second's hesitation. The commander looked Balg up and down, taking in the 9 or so empty mugs of ale in front of Balg, and then surveyed the room. The commander asked, "And are you on patrol, Balg?" Balg's face turned red and his chest swelled. The older man grew angry at the accusation. And though Balg was, in fact, supposed to be on patrol tomorrow morning, which he knew would come all too soon, he still grumbled defensively at his new commander. "Of course not." Calm yourself, Balg," the commander insisted. "None of you wear uniforms, so I just had to check." "No funding for uniforms," Balg retorted. "Yes, well, we're going to change that, aren't we?" "We?" Balg questioned. "Yes," the commander said, pushing his hood back to show off his famous silver-white Targaryen hair. As he lounged back into the booth, looking wistful, "We're going to change a lot of things about this City Watch." And that settled that. Prince Daemon Targaryen, Lord of Fleabottom, and the new commander of the City Watch would, in fact, make Balg's life a living hell. No doubt about it. Balg smiled down at the rest of his ale, which, you know what, did not actually taste that bad now that he thought of it. That's the end.
Well done.
Well done, kids.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Kens. Awesome story. Title of the story was Balg of the City Watch. I love the level of detail. Absolutely beautiful.
Yes.
Like everything smells like the ale, or like the stench of piss when you walked in the tavern. Well done all around.
Yeah, it took me straight to the blue line.
or the red line. Well, red line if people were getting like stabbed. Or
the red line doesn't bother. It's the blue line, the underground area of the blue line.
Oh, okay.
Very piss heavy.
Interesting. So, Kens, can you talk to us about what was your motivation for the story, and kind of tell us what your creative process was while you were writing this piece?
Yeah. Well, I feel like one thing I did that, I feel like Sheedy, or just instance, I don't want to give away that I already know your guys' stories because I don't know when this is going to be released, but I feel like both of you kind of put yourselves into a story and figured out like what you would do in certain situation, but I really just wanted to be someone else, I guess. So I was like, I pulled up this book that you guys gave me.
Oh no, Sims gave you that. That's all Chris. Again.
Sims. The Rise of the Dragon, and I was just looking in here for like a snippet that would be interesting. And I wanted to ground it a little bit in some of the characters that we know, so like Daemon. And I found it interesting that the City Watch was like absolutely just degenerate before Daemon started. Mm-hmm. And so I just started wondering, what would that be like? Would there be one amongst the City Watch that is trying to make it into something that when Daemon arrives, he's going to be pumped that there's a, commander that is actually going to take this seriously, that kind of thing. So I don't know, it grew out of that.
Mm.
Yeah, I think too, because, we got House of the Dragon Season 2 coming up. I put myself in a Game of Thrones sort of scenario with Colliver. And I think just the fact that House of the Dragon's coming up too, it was so cool to have a House of the Dragon sort of centric story. What was sort of, you said you kind of tried to be someone else. Do you like writing that way? Do you like writing as a specific character? Or are there some stories where you write and you try to be each character to understand their motivations?
I try to put yourself into those shoes, yeah, but I do find it fun to take on the challenge of being somebody who's completely different than you are. And I mean, in a sense, everyone in this world is a lot different than me, because I don't unfortunately live in a world where there is dragons and it's medieval times, but
incest, yeah.
But I thought like a guy named Balg who was old and just kind of, I don't know, like bitter and wizened, but not being taken seriously. I just found it interesting and challenging, so I just wanted to.
That's awesome.
Step into that. Yeah.
Yeah, when we saw on screen when Daemon took over the City Watch, and I believe the quote that he referred to him as was a bunch of hungry dogs when he found him.
Yeah.
And then trying to bring that back out as they're doing their sweeps through the street. What I love about this story is Balg is, like you said, that character that started. He's been in the city guard, what it was called at that time, for who knows how long. He's a veteran of that. He's also of the common folk. But, when you think about the common folk and you're just watching all these nobles interact on screen, you think of them almost as like dumb or, lesser than, or just like very simple.
Uneducated.
And what I love about Balg is that you made him like witty and calculating and trying to get a read on who his new charge was going to be. So can you take us through your decision to, give the character those sorts of characteristics?
Yeah, I didn't want him to necessarily be somebody with like army training, but I wanted him to be somebody who was just trying to do his best and like had a little bit of self-respect. So he's like, we're the City Watch, we should probably be going on patrol, but he didn't really know how to like command men. So I wanted somebody who had earned enough respect that some people were listening to him, but also the City Watch was still just completely in disarray. Like the guys would go out drinking while they're on patrol, all that stuff. So I didn't want him to have full control over the city or like respect over those guys, but I wanted him to have been trying. Just like doing his best. Yeah. And he was I wanted him to be a super bitter character so that he like went in there expecting the worst, expecting the Lord of the Flea Bottom to live up to his reputation and have no interest in cleaning up the City Watch, but then be like pleasantly surprised by the fact that Daemon seems to be taking this seriously.
I hate to do this. I have a question, and it sucks because it's Westeros Stories, and it's sort of supposed to be, you know, different from our other episodes. And we hired you middle of last season. It was just me and Sims, and we sort of had our differences, you know. And I hate to do this with the whole greens versus blacks thing, but this kind of comes off to me as a little bit of propaganda for Teams Blacks, if I'm being honest. Daemon comes in, he's pleasantly surprised because Daemon's gonna clean it up. But what about Otto? Where's he at? What's he doing? You know, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more Team Greens in this story because to me it comes off as catering to Team Blacks, and they already get catered to. They don't need any more catering.
Is there a question in there?
No. Yeah. Just put a question mark after the last thing I said. It didn't need to be any more catering.
I didn't intend it for that to happen.
Subconsciously probably happened just because you're so in bed with the blacks, but that's okay.
Well, Daemon is just a good character.
Oh yeah, he is. I didn't want. Again, I'm so sorry, folks, if you're watching or listening. This is not supposed to be like this, but I felt like if I didn't say anything, no one had the power to, and you got to speak truth to power. And that's what I think
it's an interesting question, and to answer it with another question, did Otto Hightower have anything to do with the city guardsmen?
Or no, not really.
No, and as a matter of fact, and I was going to bring this up later, because one thing I found interesting in your writing was that you differentiated between, you know, the vernaculars of
the
really small
well
folk and the nobility, and I found that interesting. But as we're looking at that contrast, Otto is someone that's so high up in the food chain, and he comes from this rich family, and he's the hand of the king. I guarantee throughout his whole life, he has not had one interaction with someone who's a small folk or someone from Flea Bottom.
All joking aside, that's a really good conversation because, like you said, how the guy didn't know it was Daemon, you know, at first, and it's like, oh, it's Daemon Targaryen. Like Daemon can relate to those guys. Mm-hmm. Those guys would, I think, sniff out an Otto Hightower in their presence, like right away, like, oh shit, this dude seems important because he's acting that way.
Yeah,
I 100%. Not that it's a bad thing. In fact, it's a very good thing. Otto should be like that. Want that on there? We're gonna keep that in.
He should be a hottie toddy. Princely man.
But the question I did have, Kins, was the sort of the Daemon Targaryen character reveal, and we talked about it a little bit. But do you like character reveals? You like sort of the big surprise? Why? Do you think it comes to like an M. Night Shyamalan thing? You like twists? Like what is it?
No, I call it in my own right. I call it like a mythical name dropping. It's
I like that.
So I wanted to have a character that we would recognize so that it would ground us in a certain time period of the Targaryen like empire, but I didn't want it to be immediately obvious. So I personally love a slow reveal where, as a reader or as a watcher, you're like, is that who I think it is? I think this might be Daemon.
Yeah.
But then I wanted the moment where he like pushes back his hood and he's definitely got the Targaryen hair, and you're like, yeah, that is.
I do.
Like,
yeah.
I find that personally rewarding as a watcher or reader if I'm watching or reading the series. So
I agree.
That's just what I did.
I saw the new Godzilla movie. I was like, is that the Zilla himself? And then
as he started to come out.
Yes, he's coming out. I was like, maybe it's a boat. We'll see. It could be a carp. And then all of a sudden you see the spikes. You're like, it's most likely Godzilla. But I still need to see a little bit more.
But it's a gratifying moment.
It is.
Yeah,
it's like when it's like that meme when Leo DiCaprio's pointing at the theater screen.
Yes. If I could nerd out The Dark Knight, the opening scene where they act like the Joker's not there, but he planned the bank robbery and he takes the mask off at the end. They're like, he is there. You know, it is very exciting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that was all I had for questions.
That was all I had. No, it was honestly, Kinsey, all joking aside, about the Blacks propaganda. It was a very good story. I really enjoyed it.
Very great story.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
I had fun writing it.
And I can't wait to see what else you come up with on these Westeros stories. The beauty of this segment or these episodes is that throughout the years, we can just drop these.
You never know when we're going to do it. You don't know when we're going to do it. And next thing you know, boom, 4.
Exactly. So, thank you.
I would love to know if I'm not sure if we keep doing these, I would love to know if people want to hear more about Balg or if I should just jump to a different person and keep writing little shorts. Because
and it's your discretion, but we could do some fun polls on the Instagram. That'd be great.
Yeah. Cool. Well done, Kins. Thank you again. Listeners, thank you for joining us for another iteration of Westeros Stories.
And if you're viewing, thank you.
And if you're viewing, I always forget about the video component.
I know. I look at it a lot. I look directly down the barrel of the lens.
But thank you so much for joining us, and we will be back soon.
Check out the handle, switch, truth on swoosh. Hitters don't miss. Already just added a ton of y'all to my list. Bitch, death wish. Not to be messed with, tested quiz.